fuel dispute story and union warnings that a strike is still a genuine possibility. The Regional Secretary of the GMB Union, Paul Maloney, is here. Paul, a very good afternoon to you and welcome.
Thank you.
You think, I think I'm right in saying this, you think that the government is partly motivated in what many people perceive as its mishandling of this in terms of public relations by a desire to increase the money flowing into government coffers. Explain.
Two issues. One is they want to bury bad news about the government and the Prime Minister activities and
That's totally explicable. People will buy that completely.
They will buy that one. And the second one is that the economy was due to go into recession in the last quarter of this year. And they took the opportunity to put up these prices of petrol to get people panic buying. And they successfully and allegedly made something like £80 million in income tax in the first 2 days of the panic.
I have to say, the only figure I've seen today bandied around was an extra 32 million. Let's assume even it's 80 million. It sounds a lot of money. In the scheme of government spending, it's a drop in the ocean. Are you seriously suggesting that there's effectively a conspiracy by the government to increase spending at the pumps, increase the amount of money going into the exchequer, to massage government figures to their advantage? It seems pretty far-fetched.
I've got no doubt that this government seems to want to do whatever it takes necessary to massage whatever figures they choose to massage.
But that kind of conspiracy requires a degree of competence. Quite a lot of people feel this government's not showing that streak right now.
Well, whatever they're shown or not shown, why did a senior minister like Francis Maude come out and make such a comment as to top up your tanks and to fill a jerry can and put it in your shed? Now, you can accept mistakes by ministers, you can accept mistakes by politicians, but that's more than a mistake. And then to say that he didn't know what a jerry can was, we have got people out in ambulance services who couldn't get sufficient fuel to keep ambulances going. We have got people who work in public services, who works in the health service, or in emergency social services, community nurses, who had to top up and ill afford to be able to top up their tanks so that they could go to work, so they'd have a wage at the end of next month. And if the government were not quite sure of what they're doing, why then didn't they keep their mouths shut and let the dispute go ahead?
But you know the way it works. Surely Francis Maude would have been damned if he did, damned if he didn't. Had he not come out and said, look, we've got this problem looming, there's a strike that's probably going to happen in 7 days, people need to be prepared. And indeed, Eric Pickles today, another government minister, came out and said, actually, people have been made aware now. This is almost a dry run for if and when it does happen, and this has built some resilience into the system. People realised actually how vulnerable they were.
Well, we remember the Tories doing this back during the miners' strike, where they said stockpile the coal in order to prevent it from happening. There was no strike imminent. The Unite Union had made a decision to ballot its members. They balloted their members. They were engaged in talks. There was no strike imminent this weekend or next weekend, and indeed for a long time perhaps after that. There was progress during those discussions, and Francis Maude, as he is trying to do for the past 2-3 years, trying to scupper the activities of trade unions, and he has now successfully, I think, done that perhaps again, and he has now created a crisis amongst communities. If crimes against humanity could be translated to communities, I think this would reach in the top 3 of crimes that he has done to people. He has done untold damage. What working people in the whole country has now got to pay is an additional 5 or 6 pence per litre for fuel for his gaffe. And it's a gaffe that he has engineered. It's not a mistake, it wasn't an error, it's one that he has engineered. And I am asking for him to resign his position on behalf of the people who elected him, and he should take Cameron and Clegg with him, and the Chancellor as well.
Yeah, well, he's not going to resign, is he? Why do you say Francis Maude should resign? I think there's a widespread acceptance that his advice was ham-fisted, it was cack-handed, he didn't think through the consequences perhaps as he ought to have done. And then the government as a whole didn't stick to the message, having decided what the right message was. But asking him to resign, and other government ministers too, some people might feel that's an overreaction.
I think they were extremely lucky that they have got away without fatalities. And running into the weekend, we could have finished into a problem where we didn't have the emergency services with sufficient fuels and no measures put in place for them to have sufficient fuel. If there was a major incident, then I'm afraid it would be more than cack-handed. They could be done for corporate liability.
Okay. Paul Maloney from the GMB. Thank you very much.